This video is intended for the other developers in the Permissionless Software Foundation, and we are currently exploring our plugin architecture for the web wallet, specifically the wallet at wallet.fullstack.cash. It's a Gatsby application, and we're trying to make it as modular as possible, breaking all new functionality up into plugins so that we can treat the application like a series of Lego blocks and add and remove features as we see fit to create customized web apps for other people. And so we've had this ongoing discussion about how are we going to do the plugin architecture, and there's like the theory and then there's the implementation. And so this video is going to explore both the theory and the implementation. I've been working on this for a couple days. I think I've got a clear path forward, and the purpose of this video is to share it with the other developers to get their feedback, and also just to communicate some of these ideas so that we can all come together and work together as a team. So I'm going to cover the architectural overview with the diagrams and explanations. I'm going to talk specifically about the component shadowing and component extension, which are these concepts in Gatsby, and which is like sort of the core of this idea and how we get this modularity and these plugins architecture to work. And then I'm going to show some examples of different repositories in the PSF GitHub group that I've put together to show how this is wired together. And then I'll wrap it up by talking about the differences between the user interface and the business logic and where the code for each of those should be located. So let's talk about the architecture, because this is really the core idea, and it's important in order to understand what I'm about to say that you have a strong grasp of Gatsby starters versus themes versus plugins, and you can read about those if you're unfamiliar with it at gatsbyjs.com/docs/plugin themes and starters. Here, and it'll walk you through what the difference is between a plugin, a theme, and a starter. But real quickly, a theme is a plugin. So there's generic plugins, and then there's themes, which are also plugins, but themes control more of the look and feel. Whereas starters are they're like a repo that you essentially clone to start a brand new Gatsby website. And it's important to understand the relationship of within the Gatsby way of doing things of starters, themes, and plugins, and how they relate to one another. Specifically for this project, again, think of this as Lego blocks. Ultimately, we're trying to end up here with a Gatsby website. So if you go to wallet.fullstack.cash, that's an example of a Gatsby site that implements this web wallet. And so that's ultimately where we're trying to go. But what we start with is over here is this Gatsby IPFS web wallet. This is a repository with that name in the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group. And it's a Gatsby theme. So it's a plugin, but it's also a theme because it largely drives the user interface, the visuals. And then what we're trying to do is create a whole bunch of additional plugins, the little Lego blocks, that we can attach to this core wallet engine. And so what I'm going to show today is this little plugin that I created called Gatsby Plugin BCH Transaction History. And so it's intended to just show the transaction history. I didn't actually get that far, but I got far enough to illustrate the sort of basic ideas that I need to communicate. And so you would take like a little plugin like that. So, examples of other plugins would be like the post office client for using SLP tokens with a post office, or HD wallet support. If you wanted to make use of the full like HD wallet, that would be another plugin. Or sweeping tokens from a paper wallet, that's going to be another plugin. So you'll be able to take all these little Lego blocks, all these little plugins, and add them up to create a customized site. And so the architecture that we're going for here is we're going to build all these little additional plugins. We're going to take the most common core ones and assemble them into this other repo called PSF Web Wallet, and that's a Gatsby starter. And this is the repo that people would use to create their own customized web wallets. We also have wallet.fullstack.cash, which is a site that we use the starter to generate that site and start with, but now it's like a thing that lives on its own. And by following this architecture, other people who create their own sites, using, again, wallet.fullstack.cash as an example, we can create other customized Gatsby plugins using the same architecture to customize specific sites. So this is the map, or this should actually be like that, because these are optional. And anyways, this is sort of visually the architecture that we're trying to build here. Okay, so the core idea that's going to enable us to build these little plugins is shadowing and extending. And so you can read about those at gatsbyjs.com/docs/theme API. And I have that right here. And so shadowing is an important concept where in the site, so going back to the diagram, in the site you can shadow one of the elements in a plugin and essentially overwrite it, and overwrite it completely. But sometimes overwriting it completely is not what you want to do. You want to take its current functionality and just add a little bit to it without rewriting the whole thing, and that's where extending comes in. So extending lets you take a component and then add additional functionality to that component. And that's really the magic that's going to let us add all these plugins and then customize them in the site. And so this right here is an example of the syntax, and I'm going to show this in the code here in a minute. So I'm going to give some examples with some PSF repositories. So there's Gatsby IPFS Web Wallet. That's our Gatsby theme, and that should be considered like the core wallet engine. That's what does basic Bitcoin Cash sending and receiving, and SLP token sending and receiving. And it's essentially like the biggest building block that everything else is wrapped around. And then I created this small Gatsby plugin that just is concerned with getting the Bitcoin Cash transaction history for the address in the wallet. And it's an example of a very generic plugin that you would create to add additional functionality. And then there's the Gatsby starter, BCH wallet starter. So these are the names of the repositories. So if I go to the actual Permissionless Software Foundation, so here's the BCH wallet starter, here's the Gatsby plugin, and there's also somewhere in here there's the BCH, the core wallet engine. But anyways, this is where you can find them, github.com/Permissionless Software Foundation. This is where everything's located. So these are the repositories that I'm going to cover in this presentation. Okay, I'm not quite there yet. So let me show let me show the web wallet. This is the web wallet. It's running locally, and or actually it's not running locally. When it opens up, it defaults right now. This is all going to change, but for the moment, it defaults to this wallet view. This is what's loaded. And what I just added was this button here. This is not in... So everything that you see here, this is in the Gatsby IPFS Web Wallet, that core engine Gatsby theme. But this button is not. This button comes from the generic plugin that I created. And I'm going to show you how I was able to inject that into this site. Okay, code. So that's the web wallet. That's the plugin. And that's the site. Okay. So this code here is the BCH wallet starter. This is the actual site. And like I was saying, this card and this card and this card and this card, these all come from the Gatsby theme, Gatsby IPFS Web Wallet, and specifically this file. So I'm in Gatsby IPFS Web Wallet. It's in source, components, admin LTE, wallet, index, and this is the index file. This is like the whole wallet view, and then each of these cards is one of these files in here. So create, well, that's not shown here. Import is this card right here, import wallet. So anyways, here's the core, sort of virgin code. This is how it comes, and you can see all these here. You can see this is the wallet information, this information right here, the new wallet card right here, import wallet card right here, and then this wallet info, which is this warning right here. What I did is I added this line right here, which allows us to pass additional components into this component as a prop, and that's essentially how we're injecting this little button in right here. This is coming in later. So this is the first part. Being able to inject components as a prop. It's a pretty small change, but this is what we need to get used to. This is what we need to add to our Gatsby IPFS Web Wallet. That theme, that core engine, we need to start getting following this pattern of adding this so that we can later inject additional components into these views. So this is the first core idea that I want you to take away. So this is the theme, and that got translated into a site. So let's look at the site. Here's the actual site, the BCH Web Starter, BCH Wallet Starter. This is an example of component shadowing. So I've got in the source directory, I've got this Gatsby IPFS Web Wallet, and I'm following the same architecture. And if you read the Gatsby documentation, it'll explain this. This is how you do shadowing. So components, admin, LTE, wallet, index. So I'm shadowing. So I'm overwriting that wallet index file that's in Gatsby IPFS Web Wallet. So I'm shadowing this file right here, this index.js. And so what I'm doing, by just basically making the file the same name and following this directory structure, that would shadow it and overwrite it. But when you look at the actual code here, this is an example of extending. So what I'm doing is I'm importing the original wallet component, the view component, this index file, and then I'm creating this wallet 2 that extends the original wallet. So I'm extending it, and all I'm doing in the render function is I'm passing in, I'm calling the original component, and I'm passing in any props that get passed in here. I'm just passing them along to that original component, and I'm adding this second additional component, and that's this here. So this is generating some HTML and passing it along as a component. So because this is called import components, it's going to go right here, import components. So that's how it gets rendered. Okay, so this is the second major concept of extending, and if you go to this this Gatsby tutorial documentation, I'm just following. You'll notice it follows the same pattern here, where I'm essentially just rendering it here, and passing all the props and adding a new prop. So just following that same basic pattern, and then hopefully it's clear that this function is rendering this HTML and injecting it in there. Now the actual HTML that it's rendering comes from the plugin, the generic plugin. So that's this one right here, and it's a very simple. It's like the simplest possible plugin I could make. So here it is here, Gatsby plugin BCH TX history, and it just has one component, this TX history component, and it's very simple. It's just a button. It's just a button, and it's got a handler, and so that component, I added that plugin to this site, and then I'm calling it right here. And in fact, I'm calling the specific component there, and then I'm rendering it inside of this add cards function, which will inject it into the DOM. And so that's another. So we've got several things going on here. We've got the shadowing, we've got the extending, and then we've got the additional plugin component that is being rendered and then injected into the site. So those are the major things going on. Those three things: shadowing, extending, and then how you access a component from a plugin. And one of the other things I have going on here is this wallet info. So the props gets passed in here. I passed in a wallet info prop, which is coming from the parent props. So they're trickling down from what would normally be the wallet. I'm passing that along here because this is ideally supposed to get the transaction history for the address when you click on the button. I didn't quite get that far, but I was able to at least use props to pass in like the wallet, the base wallet information. Okay. And so when you're developing, so here's the site, and I'm working on the site, and I'm trying to add this other plugin in here. And instead of going through the full process of like publishing to NPM and then updating the version, there's some tools, some tricks that you can use here to do a little bit more rapid prototyping. So here's the package.json. Again, I'm in the starter, so I'm actually in effectively a Gatsby site. And here's the plugin, and instead of referencing an NPM version, I'm actually calling the GitHub repository. So Permissionless Software Foundation, the actual repository, and then with this $, I could do it just like that, and then it's going to grab the master branch. But I'm working on my own branch, so you can do $, and then the branch. So it's actually calling the GitHub repository and that branch within the repository instead of going to NPM and getting it. And then in this Gatsby config, because this is the site, so I'm working in this directory right here. No, I'm working in this directory right here, BCH Wallet Starter, and it's in this PSF folder, and the plugin is also in that same folder. So in the Gatsby config, I can use this require resolve dot dot, so I can go up one directory and into the plugin directory. So this lets me make changes right over here, save them, and then I can just npm install, and it'll grab the code from the repository, and then this part will let it sort of resolve locally. But I think you have to have both of these pieces. But anyways, this is just a little kind of a hack that helps with rapid development and rapid prototyping, so that you don't have to go through the full formal process of publishing to npm and every time you make a change. So I wanted to cover that real quick. And lastly, again, to sort of take a step back and zoom out and talk higher level about the architecture again, everything I showed here in terms of the plugin that controls this little button, this is just visual. This is just UI elements, and so it's fine if you're gonna if we're doing anything that manipulates the user interface here, we should just create a Gatsby plugin, because we're taking the approach that anything that can be a plugin should be a plugin. And so the new features that we develop, we're going to develop them as plugins, and it's largely going to be concerned with the UI elements. If you're doing anything with the business logic, like for instance the post office, there's a lot of transaction manipulation happening there, and the use of buffers and binary data, and that doesn't translate real well from the Node.js to the browser. And we first ran into this issue with the core wallet engine, which is Minimal SLP Wallet. We ended up compiling that with Browserify and using, let's see, where are we here? This html.js file, which is in the source directory. And this lets us load the Minimal SLP wallet as an external dependency, and so that way, because Gatsby uses Webpack, which does not do a good job of translating buffers from Node.js to the browser, but Browserify does. So that Minimal SLP wallet, which does all the core Bitcoin Cash blockchain interaction, we compile that as a separate library with Browserify, and then we import it here so that when we're working on the Gatsby stuff, we can just focus on the Gatsby stuff. And all the Bitcoin Cash stuff, we handle that as like an external dependency, as an external library. And it separates these concerns, and it gets around a lot of problems. So this is the other pattern that we're going to follow going forward. So this bullet point really here is just talking about the plugins should be used mostly just for user interface and visual changes, and anything that can around the business logic or the Bitcoin Cash transaction manipulation, that should have its own separate npm library with its own separate tests, and that can be separately version controlled and separately compiled with Browserify. And it's mostly gets down to avoiding issues with the buffer class, because it's so different between Node.js and the browser. And Browserify is really the best way to handle that, and Webpack does not do a good job with that. Okay, so this was long, boring. Thank you for sticking through this. Let's discuss this on the Permissionless Software Foundation Telegram channel. And this is not written in stone. This is just what I think it is shaping up well to be the patterns that we use for building these types of plugins and customizing the web wallet.